Hello everyone and welcome to the first Tempo Strategy Wild Meta Snapshot breakdown for the Darkmoon Races mini-set. We were looking for the new mini-set to shake up the madness at the Darkmoon Faire meta, and Darkmoon Races certainly delivered. The mini-set introduced a new combo with Hysteria, Wretched Tiller, and Death Speaker into the format that took the wild meta by storm. Tiller OTK Warlock was set to re-sculpt the wild meta, but Blizzard announced a nerf that killed the combo less than a week after the set's release. The Tiller OTK inspired a surge of aggressive decks to counter it, and even after the Hysteria nerf took Tiller out of the equation, we're still feeling the impact of an aggressive meta shift. Besides Hysteria, quite a few new cards are making their mark, but the biggest impact came from Nitro Boost Poison, which boosted the Rogue class back to Tier 1 status. Even with Rogue's ascension, the old top-tier standbys haven't lost any steam. As a result, we have a variety of Tier 1 decks, but the gulf between Tier 1 and the lower tiers is wider than ever. There's a lot to digest, so come join our wild meta experts as we break down the format's latest developments. As always, be sure to subscribe to the Tempo Strategy YouTube channel and ring the bell to stay up to date with our wild Hearthstone content. Now let's get started. Quite a few things have changed, but one thing certainly stayed the same. Secret Mage is still the best deck in Wild. This deck sits at the top of our Tier 1 thanks to its wide assortment of back-breaking plays. Secret Mage has rapid board development, efficient card draw, disruptive secrets, AoE removal, and over-the-top burst damage, which all come together to make Secret Mage one of the most frustrating decks to play against on ladder. Of all the decks we're featuring here, Secret Mage has the most stable matchup spread with few weak matchups, and that's true even with anti-secret tech cards like Eater of Secrets seeing more and more play. Darkglare Warlock also holds steady in Tier 1, even in an aggressive meta that seems primed to fight against it. Fact of the matter is, Darkglare Warlock can still build an unbeatable board out of nowhere with its rapidly discounted giants and Darkglare's extra mana generation, and most decks in Wild can't cope with a board full of giants that drops as early as turn 3. After Darkmoon Races, the deck is even more consistent than before, thanks to Backfire, which helps the deck draw cards and set up its massive swing turns faster than ever. While it is true that Darkglare Warlock is a challenging deck to play, it's also one of the most rewarding to master, which makes this deck a top legend staple. New to Tier 1 in Darkmoon Races, Odd Rogue has ranked up thanks to Nitro Boost Poison, a new card that buffs both minions and weapons and drives Odd Rogue's damage output up to unprecedented levels. Odd Rogue was already one of the most consistent decks in the game with its early board development and relentless hero power, but Nitro Boost Poison gives the deck the extra push it needed to close the game against decks like Secret Mage and Darkglare Warlock. With this newfound strength, we're only going to see more and more of Odd Rogue as time goes on. And of course, you can't introduce a weapon buff card to Rogue without Kingsbane being in the conversation. Kingsbane Rogue with Nitro Boost Poison is one of the fastest aggro decks we've ever seen in Wild, period. Few decks deal as much damage, draw as many cards, or hit the board as quickly as Kingsbane Rogue, and even if you have defensive counterplay against the deck like taunt minions or weapon removal, Kingsbane Rogue still has strong odds to simply overwhelm you. Reno Priest rounds out our Tier 1, and it's the only late game combo control deck you'll see hold its own at this level. Reno Priest is well-rounded to fight against all comers in this meta, with the defensive tools to hold the early game, inevitable combo win condition to dominate the late game, and a Highlander suite that's strong at every stage. This deck is traditionally weak against other combo decks, but with the meta's current aggressive trend, you won't see too many viable combo decks as serious ranks, so as long as you're prepared to fight back against aggro, Reno Priest is still a strong option for fast climbing. Moving on to Tier 2, we actually have fewer decks at this level than we have at Tier 1. Early on in the Darkmoon Races meta, the most powerful strategies are miles ahead, but there are still a handful of decks that are conditionally strong against Tier 1 and can hold their own against the meta, so let's take a look. Odd Paladin is our top Tier 2 pick, and while it's not as powerful or as fast as the Tier 1 aggro decks, it does have an advantage in building a board that snowballs out of control quickly thanks to its token generators and hero power. Odd Paladin is particularly strong at fighting back against rogues, since both Odd and Kingsbane rogues have trouble competing with Odd Paladin's runaway boards. On the other hand, the deck is a bit too slow to overwhelm Darkglare Warlock or pressure Reno Priest before their strategies come online. Even so, Odd Paladin's real strength is in its consistency, so we don't expect this deck to fall off the radar anytime soon. Pirate Warrior is another solid aggro deck that's powerful enough to hold its own at the Darkmoon Races. Just like with Rogue, Pirate Warrior gets to play the new powerhouse card Nitro Boost Poison, and while Warrior's not quite as smooth at setting up a big weapon as Rogue is, it's still a huge boon to the deck's damage output. As for matchups, Pirate Warrior's not quite strong enough to keep up with the rogues or hold the board against priests, but it is particularly strong against Darkglare Warlocks since it has enough fast board presence and burst damage with weapons to punish Darkglare for cutting itself too deep with self-inflicted damage. Next up, Big Priest is yet another tier 2 mainstay that's keeping up at the Darkmoon Races. While Big Priest may bide its time in the early game, it hits the board hard in the mid-game with palm reading into Shadow Essence, and few decks can compete with its avalanche of heavy-hitting taunts once Big Priest gets its engine going. On the other hand, if Big Priest doesn't have the right removal early on, or it doesn't find Shadow Essence, it can have a hard time competing, especially against aggro decks with heavy burst damage like Kingsbane Rogue and Secret Mage. Overall, Big Priest's biggest strength is in its ability to gatekeep against the lower tiers, so it's sure to stick around for some time to come. Odd Warrior is the last of our tier 2 decks, and it's staying strong against the top tiers off the strength of its aggro matchups alone. The deck has evolved in the Darkmoon Faire era by prioritizing board control over everything else, adapting cards like Risky Skipper, Lord Barov, Tent Trasher, and Armor Vendor. As a result, Odd Warrior can survive against aggro and Darkglare like no other deck, but it can't stand up against other late game decks, especially decks like Reno Priest and Big Priest. Is it worth it to have such a polarized matchup spread? With the latter as aggressive as it is right now, Odd Warrior is a solid deck by the numbers, but be ready to switch if the meta starts to slow down. So what's the best pick for ladder overall? Tier 1 has more variety than we've seen in some time, so that's up to you. The Darkmoon Races meta is still young, and while we're confident in the tier 1 spread, the meta still has some room to develop, especially in the wake of the Tiller OTK combo nerf. We're keeping a close watch on the wild meta as it develops, so be sure to check out the full meta report on our website for all the details, and as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell to stay up to date with our wild Hearthstone content on YouTube. Thanks for watching!